You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Last week, I got a bit ahead of myself and the calendar by announcing guests who would ostensibly be on today, who actually will be with us a week from today on June 28th. So check out women's quotations collector Rosalie Maggio and Sui Park, the creator of hashtag Not Your Asian Sidekick, next week. This week's actual guests are decidedly not to be skipped over, not in any imaginable way. The woman who produced Freedom Summer, the major documentary that's going to debut this month on PBS, is here. Our Mideast correspondent, Mona Eltahawy, is with us by phone from Cairo, talking about the new wave of sexual assaults and the government crackdown on protesters. And Academy Award-winning actor Marisa Tomei talks about being back on Broadway, sexuality, spirituality, and craft. What a show. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. The conservative columnist for the Washington Post, George Will, yes, that's the one with the bow tie, wrote recently that colleges and universities are being educated by Washington, finding the experience excruciating as they learn that when they say campus victimizations are ubiquitous, and that when they make victimhood a coveted status that confers privileges, victims proliferate. And academia's progressivism has rendered it intellectually defenseless now that progressivism's achievement, the regulatory state, has decided it is academia's turn to be broken. Well, one could say, well, it's George Will. What do you expect? He was a working advisor to the Reagan campaign in 1980 while he masqueraded as being independent in his column and for ABC. And he is, to this day, a denier of climate change. I mean, in fact, the only good thing you can think to say about George Will is that he's an open atheist, and particularly in the conservative community, that's a gutsy thing to be. But that's about it. And the bow tie, oh my God. All right, so he basically attacked women who were being raped on campus as being coveted, having coveted positions and being privileged. Well, a woman named Wagatwe Wanjuki, who happens to be, proudly, a graduate of the Women's Media Center's Progressive Women's Voices program, tweeted about being a rape survivor. In fact, she set up a hashtag as a political act, the hashtag being #SurvivorPrivilege, and talked about what a privilege rape had conferred upon her because it had basically destroyed her academic life. And she's still recovering from it to this day. But what's even more fascinating is that the hashtag took off like a shot. Jessica Valenti wrote about it in The Guardian, very dryly, saying, yes, the perks of being a rape victim. And women tweeted in so much that it became a trending issue on Twitter. Tweets like, #survivor privilege of graduating 6 years later than planned because, rape, how covetable. That was Wanjuki's original tweet. Or #survivor privilege is getting to explain to truly would-be allies in your life that yes, your boyfriend could rape you. Or #survivor privilege was losing all my friends when they decided it was easier to remain friends with my rapist than stand with me. And so it went. I got to thinking about the accusation of victimhood, which we've taken so seriously that we replaced the word with survivor. Well, that makes perfect sense because, in fact, we're beyond victimhood and we are survivors. But we were almost ashamed to use it. We bought into their accusations that somehow victimhood was a privileged status. And, of course, what that does is tell the victim that for her to complain at all, she must be into victimhood. On the other hand, if she doesn't complain at all, she must be into what was done to her. She must have wanted to be raped. She must have longed to be battered. So it's a total catch-22. And I say we take back victimhood as well as survivor. And we suggest to George Will that if he thinks being raped is such a covetable, prestigious, privileged status, does he want the same thing for himself? And now for our first guest. In 1964, less than 7% of Mississippi's African Americans were registered to vote, compared to between 50 and 70% in other southern states. There was horrific violence at any attempt to register them. Freedom Summer in 1964 was a plan hatched by Bob Moses for the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which got white students for 10 weeks from the North to join activists in Mississippi for an effort that would try what had been impossible so far, to force the media and the country to take notice of what was happening in Mississippi. The documentary Freedom Summer 1964 will air on PBS on January 24th on the program American Experience. It is searing. It was an official Sundance selection. It was written and directed by Stanley Nelson, and it is produced by our first guest, Cyndee Readdean, who is here today. Cyndee, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on this really stunning documentary. I was fortunate enough as a young person to be part of the civil rights movement and worked with CORE and later on with SNCC. But so this brings some things back like sense memories, but also teaches me things I never knew before. It is a remarkable piece of work. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, it's going to air on PBS on American Experience on June 24th. And of course, it was an official Sundance selection, and it was written and directed by Stanley Nelson, and you are the producer. Tell me how it came to be.
Yes, the film was made for the American Experience, and Stanley Nelson has made a number of films for the American Experience, including a documentary that he did on Emmett Till. His most recent film for American Experience was Freedom Riders.
Right.
And so this sort of comes out of, the next, major event that's happening, that happened after Freedom Riders. So the American Experience and Stanley, got together and made this film. The funding for the film came from the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Good for them. It is so crucial that it comes right at this moment, because, of course, it culminates in, after everybody went south for Freedom Summer to register people to vote against almost insurmountable violence and odds. Then the next convention, where the Democratic Convention in Atlantic City, I remember well, and the great, bless her soul, Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a former sharecropper, spoke for the Democratic Freedom Party, which was the challenge to the all-white Mississippi delegation at the convention. And it was Johnson, then about to be president, who had it overruled because he was afraid it would harm his votes. But it nonetheless, it did culminate in the following year in the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and that's, to get back to my first point, why this is so important right now, because of course it's the 1965 Voting Rights Act that the Supreme Court recently gutted by saying that states no longer had to check with the federal government before they changed their voting laws. So was the timing coincidental or intentional?
Well, we didn't know that the Supreme Court ruling was going to come down in the middle of us making a film.
Oh, I see, of course not.
The film was made for the 50th anniversary. That was intentional. But, we're going along, we're making this film, we're meeting these amazing activists, the SNCC people, the CORE people,
yes,
the white students, and we're hearing all these stories. And then, the Supreme Court decision comes down, and it just makes, we know that the film is going to, have even more resonance with people. when we've been at screenings in Sundance, after the Sundance screening, this young, college student came up to me and said, I had no idea that this kind of thing happened. Because he was an African-American young man, and he's like, I had no idea. He's like, I'm so inspired. He's like, I'm going to vote. I'm going to go try to get people to vote. So I'm hoping that, the more, when people see this film, that they're going to be inspired.
Yes. Well, Cyndee, the film shows what the Voting Rights Act cost in lives, in welts, in, water cannons, in jailings, in beatings, and we're such an ahistoric country. We don't know what happened. We have general amnesia, short-term memory. We have, no long-term. So that there's, and the media does not usually remind us, and our education system doesn't really teach us. So where are people supposed to learn this? And this film is not only riveting in terms of drama and human spirit, but it is a real lesson in how things came to be, why people can vote now in this country, and what just then got taken away. They can't react to the Supreme Court if they don't know what it was to begin with and how it was earned, can they?
Exactly. I mean, if people don't know the cost. Making this film was an educational process for myself also. Yeah. I knew a little bit about Freedom Summer, but, after spending a year and a half working on the film and, researching and digging deep and talking to people, I came to a deeper understanding of, the cost,
yes,
the number of lives, and the post-traumatic stress that some of the people still suffer today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing that happens in the film is that individual people, the sort of portraits that emerge of individual people. I was lucky enough to have met Bob Moses, the great Bob Moses, who most people to this day have never heard of. They heard of the flashier sensibilities like Stokely Carmichael or Eldridge Cleaver or so. But Bob Moses, kept his head down, and it was a brilliant head. And it was he who came up with the idea of Freedom Summer, and he was an amazing organizer. And I remember well, which is of course in the film, when news came of the murder of Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. I was not in Freedom Summer. I was older, and I was working in the North. I was working with CORE at that point. And they were CORE workers who had gone to Mississippi, Mickey Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Cheney, and who, of course, had been murdered. And the amazing, I literally remember discussions that came back to me seeing the film where we wondered whether Freedom Summer would go ahead, because all of the kids were in training at that moment in order to go down, and we thought maybe it might be canceled. But the miracle was that everybody went, and showing that in the film there's no way not to keep your eyes from filling with tears.
Yes, I mean, it's just, amazing the courage shown by the people who, just did go to Mississippi knowing that, they might die.
That's right.
One of the things that, the people working on the film with me, when we're in the office day to day, we'd often turn to each other and say, would you have gone? I don't know. I mean,
right.
I can honestly say that I don't know. I would hope that I would have been one of those brave people.
Right. Well, you've done a great service, historically, emotionally, aesthetically, because it's a stunning film by this film. And it of course, it will air on American Experience on June 24th on PBS. But there's also a website where people can go to, and will there be a way for people to get the film itself for screenings in their own communities or something like that?
Yes, there will be. We are doing a community engagement campaign, and people can contact Firelight Media and be put in touch with the person who's handling the screenings. We're doing local screenings. We're working with organizations that are, putting together conferences and having discussions about, the voting rights and voter suppression.
Wonderful. And give the name of the website where people can go.
Sure. It's firelightmedia.tv.
Firelight as in a fireplace? FIRELIGHT?
Yes.
Firelight Media, all one word, and then .tv.
Yes.
Okay. Get it, see it, watch it on PBS. If you were there or part of that time, it will make you proud and sad and remembering. If you were not, this is stuff you need to know to understand what's going on now. Thank you for your work on it, Cyndee. Thanks a whole lot, and for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
We need to take a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. When we come back, we're going to hear a special report from Cairo about the current scandal involving the failure of the Egyptian government, now led by General El-Sisi, to respond to sexual assaults that are epidemic now, in new mass sexual assaults on women in Tahrir Square.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back. Our next guest, Mona Eltahawy, is a frequent guest on the program. She's an award-winning columnist and an international public speaker on Arab and Muslim issues. Her opinion pieces have been published in the Washington Post, the International Herald Tribune. She's been a columnist for the Toronto Star, for Jerusalem Report, and her columns now appear in The Guardian. She is our woman in Cairo. Welcome, dear Mona, back to Women's Media Center Live from Cairo.
Hello, Robin. It's good to be back.
Well, the subject matter, however, is not so happy. There was, of course, recently a horrendous multiple mass rape in Tahrir Square, which got photographed and found its way onto the internet, a mass sexual assault. And there have been, not that there aren't others all the time, I think the statistic is something like 99.3% of Egyptian women say they've been, the victims of some kind of sexual harassment, from unwanted advances straight through to rape. So there's that I want to ask you about. And I also want to ask you about, since it's happening right now, the new, quote, president, unquote, Sisi's reaction to it. And we've heard that he's using it to crack down on his usual adversaries. So bring us up to speed with a report we can trust.
Sure, Robin. I think the terrible mass sexual assaults and rapes that we saw in Tahrir over the past few days were a reminder, and a very important reminder, that mass sexual assaults in Egypt, or mob assaults, have not disappeared. People thought, because in the past people would politicize these attacks and would accuse their opponents of being behind these attacks, we can now safely say that under every president that we've had since Mubarak, and regardless of who is protesting and who isn't, these have become, sadly, standard fare in Egyptian public places. In 2005, the Mubarak regime used mob assaults against female activists and journalists. In 2006, the street used them against women, because when the regime does it, it basically says women's bodies are fair game. This is a point that we have to point out over and over. So in 2006, it was the street that was doing it. And then once the revolution began in 2011, we saw it happen from the regime, from the public on the street, from what seemed to be organized mobs, but no one knows who they are. I think that the conclusion, the very sad conclusion of this, is that women are not safe in Egypt. The regime has not held accountable its own people. In fact, the very opposite. The regime has used sexual assault. For example, the so-called virginity tests that were conducted by the Egyptian military while Sisi was head of military intelligence, and he defended those so-called virginity tests all the way to what we saw happen a few days ago. Egypt is not safe for women, and we have not seen any government take that kind of sexual assault seriously up until a few days ago, when Sisi went to the hospital to see one of the survivors of the assaults. And a few days before that, the former president, Adli Mansour, finally issued a law against sexual harassment. whether we are going to move beyond these kind of cosmetics visits where the president gives flowers to the woman and says we will never let this happen again or not remains to be seen. But I just want to make that connection between the regime and the street because Egyptian women are not safe from either.
Yes, yeah. The politicizing it resides with the fact that from whatever quarter it's coming from, they're all patriarchal.
Absolutely. Egypt is a very patriarchal state. Whether you're in the street or in the home, there's a patriarch outside and there's a patriarch inside. And the insidious thing about politicizing sexual assaults like these mob assaults in Tahrir is that people just start to defend their own political group and everybody forgets the woman.
Yes,
and
of
what
course.
about the woman who was assaulted? And so even women do this. We saw an anchor person. There was a reporter in the field who said, we've heard reports of sexual assaults. And a woman in the studio actually chuckled and said, well, everybody's happy and boys will be boys. So the last person that people think of is the survivor of the sexual assault, which even though I'm a big opponent of Sisi, I'm glad he went to the hospital. This is the first time an Egyptian president has gone to see a survivor of sexual assault. But my question about that is, you are the man who was head of military intelligence when the Egyptian military sexually assaulted women. You have not apologized for that and you have held no one accountable. So on what basis do you now say, I apologize to you for what happened? You can't apologize for what the street did. The street must be held accountable and put on trial. And now there are men who will go on trial. But what Sisi needs to do is apologize for what the regime has done to women.
Yes, of course.
This was March of 2011. This was after Mubarak stepped down and a military junta was running Egypt. And it included Sisi, who at the time was head of military intelligence. And he defended the so-called virginity test.
Yes, yeah. This is ridiculous. This is sickening. What is it, if anything, that women are doing or can do about this? I know that you and I have talked in the past about attempts to organize a grassroots coalition of women's groups to do various things, safe houses, consciousness raising, self-defense. Is any of that possible in the current chaos?
Actually, that has been happening on the grassroots for a while now because women began to speak out, that's the difference between now and, say, a decade ago. More and more women speak out. So it's unclear whether the sexual violence is increasing or if it's because more women are speaking out. But for whatever reason, more women are speaking out, and you do see women's groups on the ground, some who've organized self-defense classes, some who, just like yesterday on Sunday, a group of them had a news conference and issued some recommendations, and then others do consciousness raising. For my own part, I started a women's support group a few months ago where I just bring together, we meet once a week. It's about 10 to 12 of us. It's very small, which is exactly, I think, how it should begin, because we get to talk about how we feel when we're out on the street, how to protect ourselves.
Exactly.
But we also talk about problems at home, because this is a patriarchy, and the two must be connected, inside and outside.
Yes, absolutely. And the new, it's a committee or a commission that Sisi has supposedly founded to investigate the quote, rise in sexual assaults and develop a strategy to address it. Do we have any hopes for that, or are we pretty cynical?
Well, I mean, my cynicism is based on Sisi's history and the fact that he has not held the regime, including himself and the role that he played at the time, accountable for this. What he has said is, we promise Egyptian women that we will take this seriously because this is alien to Egyptian culture, which in and of itself is problematic, because that statistic you quote clearly shows this is not alien to Egyptian culture. Unfortunately, it's the very opposite.
Well, but it's that mode of thought that says we don't have any battered women in our culture, and until it's discovered that, of course, battered women are there. We don't have any rape victims. Our ethnic group, our culture, our country is different, until it's discovered that, of course, it's not. Was Egypt? Did Egypt send a representative to the London conference recently? There was a major London conference on violence against women.
Yes, there was the editor-in-chief of one of the daily English language newspapers here called Daily News Egypt, a woman called Rana Allem, who writes excellently about women's issues and various issues in Egypt. She went there. I don't know what her presentation or what her findings were, but I think she was one of at least one representative. I'm not sure if more went or not. But I think what we need, kind of more over and above the international conferences, is something here in Egypt that is honest, and that wants to make those connections between home, street, and regime. That says, for example, that just as we condemn and we want to do something about mob assaults on women in the street, we must also recognize that they are connected, and how can they not, to things like female genital mutilation, to things like domestic violence, to things like marital rape. In other words, unless we recognize women's autonomy and bodily integrity as a central part of this revolution, then, it's just words. And we talked about this before, Robin. We've just been replacing one patriarch with another since we got rid of Mubarak. Yeah. And very few people want to talk about the patriarch at home that has to be confronted.
What else should we know that is happening in Egypt that our papers and news here don't tell us?
Well, a couple of days ago there was a march against sexual violence, and I think the way that things turned out was, again, sadly, very kind of representative of what happens in Egypt. Two activists from an anti-sexual violence group were holding up banners saying, "Do not forget the sexual harassment that is carried out by the police." And they were arrested for those two banners. And the police arrested them for reminding people of the fact that the police sexually violate us, which they do. Yeah. And the police also arrested a taxi driver who himself was sexually violating one of the women in a protest march against sexual violence.
Oh, my God.
And that basically just kind of sums up the situation for you in Egypt today.
Yeah, it's very bad. It's very bad. I think somehow, well, I don't know, but I mean, it seems that mass classes of self-defense would be in some way helpful. But that may be very naive of me.
No, I think they would definitely help. I mean, a couple of months ago, I was making a documentary that is just now being broadcast on the BBC. The second part will actually air on Tuesday, and it focuses exactly on this, on Egypt and sexual violence. And the producer and I went to a day-long event for women that basically focused exactly on that, on self-defense, and it was packed. There were lots of young women there. Many young women showed up with their friends from school and university. Some mothers showed up with their little girls. One mother we spoke to showed up with her 4-year-old daughter, and she said, "I want her to grow up knowing that Egypt is a country that's safe for women, because right now it's not safe for women, and I want her to know she can do anything she wants, but to do that, she has to be safe." So it was a day-long event that was basically giving them self-defense instructions and consciousness raising about it is your right to be safe on the street. And one of the organizers of this event is a group that began in 2009 called HarassMap, which basically uses crowdsourcing that allows women to call in or text or send messages to tell them where they were either street sexually harassed or sexually assaulted in any way. Yes. And they put these red dots on a map, and you get to see which neighborhoods are particularly bad and stuff like that. So there are grassroots attempts, but it's such an endemic problem in Egypt because nobody took it seriously. We have a long way to go.
Yes, it sounds that way, my dear. Well, please stay safe yourself. You've been roughed up and assaulted so many times I can hardly count, and I worry about you. And I thank you for being there and for letting us in on what's really happening. And my heart, all our hearts go out to the women of Egypt. It's going to be a while before things settle down, and that in itself will be used as an excuse for what preceded things not being settled down, but never were settled down for women.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what the message we need to send out clearly is that, well, first of all, thank you for highlighting this, because it's important that we give this international exposure, because our regimes often need this kind of international embarrassment and shame, so they know that we're paying attention. But I think it's also important that Egyptian women are saying, and we're going to continue to say, you will not use our bodies for your proxy battles, because whether you're on that side or on that side, my bodily integrity is what should count, and not your political agenda.
Yes, precisely. Oh, if that would be said, and most of all, if that could be listened to, that would change the world. I send you my love and my concern and my gratitude for doing this and being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Stay safe.
Thank you, Robin.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. So much is always clamoring to get into the Surrealism Corner that I sometimes think we could do an entire show, in fact an entire program, week after week, with each hour filled with nothing but Surrealism Corner stuff from the news. Okay, so the backstory is that for about 30 to 40 years, the women's movement complained to the National Weather Service that hurricanes were named only after men. And why was this? And the response we got frequently was actually honest enough to say, well, because people don't believe that hurricanes, which are forces of natural ferocity and devastation, should be named after women. Women are gentler. Well, this, of course, made us crazy and quite ferocious. In any event, we won that battle, and hurricanes began to be named alternately with women's names and men's names. I don't know if there's ever been a Robin, because that's a genderless name, but I should check someday. So flash forward to now, and we're back in the surrealism corner. There's a new study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences about how unconscious biases shape our behavior. And the researchers looked at the most damaging hurricanes between 1950 and 2012, and they excluded some of the really big outliers like Katrina in 2005. But they found that on average, female-named storms killed an average of 45 people, while similar hurricanes with male names killed only half as many. Now, why is this, we might ask? Well, it can't be just because they're named for women, these storms are more ferocious. The authors of the study, Ki-Ju Jung and others at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and Arizona State University, also conducted experiments asking people to predict the intensity and risk of a hurricane. When asked about a male hurricane like Alexander, people predicted a more violent storm than when asked about a female hurricane like Alexandra. And likewise, the subjects of the research project were more willing, get this, to evacuate to avoid a hurricane named Victor than a hurricane named Victoria. The more masculine the name, the more people respected the hurricane that was named it. And researchers estimated that changing the name of a hurricane from Charlie to Eloise could nearly triple the death toll, and women were as likely as men to participate in this and to have the same reaction. So because people don't take it seriously, they wouldn't evacuate, wouldn't treat it with the gravity and the preparations that it deserves unless it was a male name. That's why female-named hurricanes are more deadly than male ones. The answer lies in the perception of the human beings. And that perception belongs squack in the surrealism corner. It's time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and coming up is Marisa Tomei about her new play on Broadway. And I did not mean all of that to rhyme that way. Oh, yet another A sound. Dear, dear, dear. Anyway, don't go. Yeah, here it is. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back again. Marisa Tomei is not only a proud feminist, but she is a fine actor who won her first Academy Award nomination and award as Best Supporting Actress in My Cousin Vinny in 1992. She won a second nomination for an Academy Award in 2001 for the drama In the Bedroom, and won her third nomination for The Wrestler recently in 2008. She's appeared in many films on television in Rescue Me, and she's currently starring on Broadway in a new play by an American playwright called The Reluctant Joneses. And I've seen it. It's a very interesting play. It's refreshing that it's by an American playwright and a new play on Broadway. Whee! And she is absolutely terrific. I recommend it highly. Marisa, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Hi. Thank you.
I've loved your work. I've loved your work all the way from, the obvious, My Cousin Vinny, straight through to The Wrestler, but also, on Broadway when you did the Salome. You've done a lot of stage work that I've loved. You're a really first-rate artist, and I'm mostly impressed by that, although having 3 Oscar nominations and 1 win is not chopped liver either.
They're festive.
yeah, it helps. So talk about, first of all, the play that you're in right now, The Realistic Joneses on Broadway. Tell us about that.
Well, Will Eno is it's wonderful to have his words on the Broadway stage. This is a great American voice. I won't say a new American voice because he's been writing beautiful plays for a while, but still new to a broad audience. So I feel very privileged to be in this play. And it's just 4 characters. It's myself and Michael C. Hall and Tracy Letts and Toni Collette, paired off in couples. And it's not heavily plot driven. It's very funny, but it is about death, life and death, and the beauty of life, and
and not messing around with small subjects.
Not messing around. Existential dilemmas.
I like it.
That we carry with us.
Yeah.
And I feel like through this play, there's a lot of reconciliation with the dilemma. The dilemma never goes away, but I find it to be almost like a mantra or a balm, and a funny one. Laughter is the best.
Yeah.
Is the best medicine. So I get to play a character named Pony, who's very she's a pony. She's not grown up. Mm-hmm. She could be, but she's just missed a couple of developmental moments because her mom was in the hospital when she was little, and she lost her mom young, so she really can't deal with anything, not even nothing that even whiffs of death at all.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of comedy to be milked out of that. And it's broad and it's funny, and the language is just heaven to play with.
Yeah, Will Eno is a language playwright, and the reviews have been stellar, and of the performances as well. The 4 of you that's a hell of a quartet.
We're lucky. It's so much fun. It is just so much fun every day.
Are there any tickets available at all?
This is the last chance to get them. We close on July 6th. It was always a limited run, so yes, there are some to be had, and
but they better hurry.
People to come on down. Yeah, hurry. Yeah.
Okay, it's called The Realistic Joneses. It's at which theater is it at? I don't know yet.
The Lyceum.
The Lyceum. That's
also
right.
Also a gorgeous
It is
theater.
A gorgeous theater.
Yeah.
With 4 great actors and an actual new Broadway play, serious play, not a musical, by an American playwright. Oh my God. That's a rarity in itself,
It is. It is.
You've done a lot of people think of you, I think most people think of you as a film actress, but you've done a lot of stage work.
Yes.
And great stage work.
I started in the theater, and I always go back because they say it's the temple, but for me it really is. It feels like such a safe and sacred place.
How do you adjust when you shift the totally different techniques, totally different, in a sense, genres? One enormous because every gesture large because your face is 70 foot high,
yep.
And the other having to be much subtler, but they have to hear you in the third balcony.
Plus, I think there's just the sleep schedule is also
there's that
big adjustment.
yeah.
I think they feed each other. I think that there's an improvisational energy to movies, and it keeps it very loose and very present, and that helps in theater. And then to bring the craft and the absolute construction and intention in constructing the character and bring that to the film, it's a really good balance.
Well, not everybody does both well. You're one of the ones who does, and does them both brilliantly. You know, I have to say also, I saw you in Salome, which I keep going back to because it was one of the most stunning performances and one of the most feminist performances that I have ever seen in my life. And now that I know you, I know you're a feminist, and you told me an amazing story about the dance, and I would love you to share it with the people who listen to this.
I was asked to perform in Salome with Al Pacino playing King Herod, and we would just get together and read it once in a while and slowly get it on its feet, and then slowly it became a full production. And so in the readings, we would always read those incredible words of Oscar Wilde, but there was the part where there's just a line that says, she dances the dance of the seven veils. So we talked about, well, what would this be, or what is he referring, what is the dance of the seven veils? And it was kind of left to me, which was a great part of the process, that it was just an unfolding. We didn't really talk things to death at all. And I started, well, Al said to me, just dance. Okay, well, where do I begin?
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot, Pacino.
How about, are you going to be on the harmonica with me? What's going on here? You know? So I started looking up Dance of the Seven Veils, and it's generally assumed that Oscar Wilde pulled that from the Bible. It's actually not in the Bible. And so I was stumped there. There was no information, no other information about Salome there. So I figured this was taking place in the Middle East. I started doing some belly dance. Mm-hmm. I started with that and learned a lot about belly dance and how it's an ancient female dance that keeps your organs and your hormones really humming along and vibrant, right. Very good for your fertility.
And, do you know that the Berber women do it during labor?
I didn't know they actually did it during labor. They
do it during labor, that it helps labor. Men are not allowed to see it, so they're horrified at the idea that there would be, belly dancing nightclubs where men go to watch, because to them it's a sacred dance.
And then it's a step from there to strip clubs. And
That's right.
I actually even used that as, I used a lot of this information when I did The Wrestler, too.
Yes, of course.
Because I didn't want to make her... I wanted her to be connected to her body. Mm-hmm. I wanted her to have a dance in her body, that there was something that the dance itself was giving her.
Beautiful.
So I did weave that back in through there. And in that case, I used, there's a goddess called Matangi, and she's a wild woman who lives in the forest in India. And she's the matriarch, the pre-patriarchal goddess that's behind the origin of Ganesh. Uh-huh. So I used her for The Wrestler. And then, but my journey with this kind of working with these energies started with Salome. It was just a revelation when I went on this quest to understand the seven veils, and starting with the belly dance and really feeling my body. I asked one of my teachers, where could the seven veils have come from? And we landed upon Inanna, in Sumer, the great goddess Inanna, who was revered for a millennia. And she goes into the underworld. Mm-hmm. And as she goes deep, deep, deep into the earth, she takes off 7 pieces of clothing or jewelry. So
what do you know?
Nude by the end. Yes.
What do you know?
Deep into the earth. And she actually goes down and rescues her sister, mm-hmm. and then comes up, which is a mirror of herself. So when I started, this opened up all a new spirituality for me, mm-hmm. A new connection with my body and my sexuality. And I've always loved to dance, but this even, it's so reverent for me. So
the performance,
the seven veils correlated to me with these 7 pieces of everything that she had to take off, Inanna, to be totally bare to life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's what I used for that, and it just became an incredible. I've kept it with me.
It showed.
It's part of me now.
It showed. It was stunning, and some days I think most days, in fact, that most of the Old Testament was all about the patriarchal overthrow of the original old religions, and this is another perfect example.
I feel like Oscar Wilde was absolutely tapping right into that.
I'm sure he researched it even. I mean,
the last line of Salome is, "Kill that woman."
That's right. That's right.
Because she's there, nude.
Yeah.
I didn't get to nude, which I really wanted to. I was like building up to that on the Broadway stage. That's what I really, in a flood of moonlight, But I wondered how many of those texts he researched or was actually, I almost feel that he's like he just opens up, and I think he did a lot of research, but he also taps in.
Yes, I think there's something about archetypes. I mean that is enormously powerful and symbolic, and particularly for artists, for poets, for writers, for painters, for actors.
Yes,
because
my friend just said the other day, we go to the theater to get mugged by an archetype.
Yes.
To just really let it take us.
That's right. And we spend our lives trying to haul people up from stereotypes into archetypes.
Yes. I think some of it is also wavelengths of energy beyond.
Yes.
Archetypes is a way to codify what the wavelengths are and how these energies move through us, or how they coalesce.
That's
and
right.
It's a way for us to put personas onto things so our minds can grasp them. So that's the way for us to work with them.
That's right.
In the play I'm doing now, I work with Shama, who's all about the heart and bliss, because my character Pony is just, I wanted to balance out, not even balance out really, just tap into her wide open love for her husband and for life. And I just wanted to convey that. So that's who I work with on.
And what is the goddess tradition of Shema?
Shema, she's blue, and she has the moon.
What culture?
Moon on her head, and she's from the Sri Vidya tradition. It's also a tantric practice.
You've become a goddess expert.
Well, I kind of go down those holes. I love it. I do love it. It is fun. It's empowering because there's a female face of the divine.
That's right.
Yeah. And there are certain qualities that are revered, qualities that we all want to develop, male or female, compassion and great heart.
And we're surrounded by male iconic and idol figures all the time.
It's like anything else. It's like the movies. You want it, or we want to see more women in leading roles in the movies. You want to have, a reflection. It does help
of our reality. That's right.
And of course.
I want to see more women. I want to see more older women. I want to see more women of color and more this and more that. We're working on it. And it's very lovely that we have you on our side. Unfortunately, to my grief, we're out of time. Clearly, you have to come back so we can talk some more. Because once we get to talking.
Thank you. Well, come see my archetype.
I'm on my way. We have to take one more quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live, where I am still reliably Robin Morgan. And when we come back, it will be just in time for Fighting Words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
And welcome back again. So let's go wield some fighting words. Last October, I did a commentary on this program about the fact that the top Mormon leaders were actually acknowledging error. Woo! Think of that. Dr. Dieter Uchtdorf, who's the president now, the second counselor in the church's first presidency, there's, all of these different rankings, had said, "We respect those who honestly search for the truth. We openly acknowledge that in nearly 200 years of church history, there have been some things said and done that could cause people to question. notice that he moves into the passive construction in the sentence. As he was saying this, by the way, more than 200 women were demonstrating outside to protest the church's male-only priesthood. Oops, they did it again. A woman who is a civil rights attorney and a human rights attorney, her name is Kate Kelly, has had a website called Ordain Women for a while now, and has been one of many women pushing for ordination. I should say here a little background. All men in the Mormon Church are priests or can have access to priesthood, and priesthood has perks, not only spiritual perks, but material ones, and it has power in the family, in the church, etc. For a very long time, at least until 1978, that late, you had to be not only male but white in order to be a priest. But they suddenly had a revelation after the civil rights movement that this was really beginning to look pretty bad, and so they admitted, quote, blacks, by which they meant African American men, to the priesthood, but of course not still African American women. So Kelly, has been one of the many women pushing for ordination in the church. They have decided to excommunicate her. This comes right at a time when they're supposed to be being more diverse. They're saying that same-sex attraction no longer is a sin, only acting on it is. Meanwhile, they are making allegations of apostasy against Kate Kelly. This is her statement, or a few excerpts from her statement. I was informed on June 8th that there will be a disciplinary council held in absentia by my former bishopric on June 22nd to try me for apostasy. I've moved from the Washington, D.C. area, and after I left, my former president sent me a letter outlining what he called informal probation after meeting me one time while I was packing to move. The trial will be held in my former ward. I was open and honest with my bishop from the day we launched OrdainWomen.org on March 17, 2013, communicated with him every time Ordained Women did an action, and asked that he come to me if he had any questions. While in his ward, I never once was personally called to meet with him, nor did he email me or call with any questions. 3 weeks later, I moved out, and he sent me this letter. Convening a council in my absence after I've moved is both cowardly and unchristlike. I could think of a few other names for it as well, Kate, but that's because I'm not a Mormon. She goes on, excommunication in our church is akin to spiritual death. The life-saving ordinances you have participated in, like baptism, confirmation, and temple sealing, are moot. In effect, you are being forcibly evicted from your forever family. Given the gravity of the situation, I feel like being invited to a council of this sort is akin to being invited to my own funeral. But then she goes on to say, when all is said and done and the deep mourning process for me and thousands of Mormon women has passed, I feel confident that the joy I've experienced for participating in Ordained Women will vastly outweigh my sorrows. I mean, this is a woman who loves this ridiculous church so much that she wants to be more of a part of it. She goes on to say, we took a stand. We will continue to do so. I am strengthened by the Spirit and by what we have accomplished. The Ordained Women movement will continue to grow and to ask important and sincere questions. And of course, one day they'll have a new revelation and, guess what? Women will be ordainable. It would seem to me that the voice of a woman like this is one you'd very much want to have in any organization. But that's just me. And that's our show for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS Radio WJFK 1580 AM or visiting us at WMClive.com for this and for a whole archive of all of our previous episodes. Be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week when, yes, this time for real, Rosalie Maggio, founder of the website quotationsbywomen.com, will really be here, as will Sui Park of hashtag #NotYourAsianSidekick that started a movement, plus Megan Marshall, author of the 2014 Pulitzer Prize-winning new biography of 19th century feminist and journalist Margaret Fuller. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio and WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.